Good evening to my Rover subscribers. This is a Rover 45 specific video. I thought, as some of you actually enjoy some of the details I actually gave out when I was actually looking at the Rover 45 brochure, the correct one for my car. I always like to buy the correct brochure for whatever car I've owned. I've actually got the incorrect one for my Mark 1. It was actually a July registration, but I've got an August brochure which only just came out in August, so I need to get the one that came out in April that year, I believe. I'm hopefully looking to get some more additional brochures, like the accessory. You've got the accessories brochure. I think that was a 25 and 45 accessories brochure combined, and a price list. Now the price list I'm a bit funny about. There's all sorts of things that I like to get my hands on, and when you go to a show, I like to put it on the partial shelf at the back or wherever where it's obvious. It just adds something when you go to a show. But anyway, I thought that I would go through some of the numbers of how many Mark II Rover 45s are left. Now, I know I've already done a video on Rover 45s in general, but nothing Mark II specific. And I've actually understood more about the trims that were actually, the specifications that were actually offered on Mark II 45s. And it is quite stark about how few are actually left. Um, in general, I'll go over this again. Rover 45s, they're around just under 70,000 registered in the UK from, well, we say 1999, but the earliest ones really were 2000 plates, X-Regis, and all the way to 2005. There will be some late ones. There was 55 plate ones, '06 plate ones, even some like '07 plate ones. I'm pretty sure some of you will tell me that there's a 10 plate somewhere, because some of these cars were just sitting in these old dealerships and they just couldn't be shifted. And some of them were registered really late on, despite the fact they'd been built in 2005 or either put together before the collapse of Rover or by the administrators themselves. Obviously not the administrators, but the people who work on behalf of the administrators. I'm pretty sure that it would be very bad if the administrators from the office actually started nailing bits together. That's not a good idea. And of all the cars that are in existence today of Rover 45s Mark 1 and Mark 2, whatever you want to call it, facelift, pre-facelift, I don't like the facelift. I think Mark 1, Mark 2 is quite nice actually, because there was actually a little bit more than a chin tuck going on underneath with the Mark 2. In general, the numbers that exist today on the roads, it's around 3,700, 3,800, around about that mark, give or take a few. And it is stark. That is pretty stark, and it represents about 5% of what was actually first registered. So 5.3% left, something like that. I have got a percentage algorithm. For those of you who don't watch my Focus Mark 1 videos, you may know me as the how many left Mark 1 focus person. I've done a lot of work on the Facebook groups, and I've produced a complete spreadsheet of how many are left, a breakdown in the specifications, how many of a particular engine are left. So basically I can go to people and say, look, give us your registration, and I can tell you from that reg, the specification. Obviously, like if someone said it's a Focus Z-Tech 1.6 automatic from 2002, I will be able to tell them using those three details: the spec, the engine, and anything else. Not colours. I can't do colours, and I can't do body styles. The DFT do not give that sort of information out. And I can tell people, oh, your car is one of so many from that year left with that engine and that spec, and it has amazed a lot of people. And so I'm known as that person. I've discovered a few little things that people wouldn't have always known. Discovered that there are only 90 ST170 estates, if you know what ST170 estates are, on the roads. So there's a lot of things I discovered, but the only thing is I don't get this data on engines in particular until every May. So until May, the May one is the big one. That's where I can put all my algorithm. Some of my stuff is done via algorithms. I can put all my algorithms into action. And after about a day's work, 2 days work, it could take a couple of days, or just spread it out because I have to work around it and just do a few hours here and there. I can actually get a pretty accurate picture of how many are left. And if you go to that how many left website, particularly for Mark 1 Focus, is where the information crosses over into Mark 2 territory, because the ZTEC spec was a Mark 1 and a Mark 2 spec. There's no way of splitting the two, but with the DFT information, DFT statistics, I was able to split the two apart, and let's just say numbers are about 50% less than what you would have added up on how many left, put it that way. So with Rover 45s, I'll probably want to do something similar, because as I get into a car and more interested, I learn more things and I want to know these pieces of information. And I'm pretty sure, because I'm now on pretty much every Facebook group to do with the car and MG Rover, I can relay that information to people in the future, and I pretty much will do something similar in May. But at the moment it's a basic spreadsheet. But what I have done is I've made a Mark II spreadsheet for Mark II owners, because we're talking about 12 months. These cars were only made from, earliest ones were before April, but we're talking about April to April. That's 12 months of manufacture, with the odd few hundred being made by the administrators. There would have been more that were sold abroad, but there wouldn't have been many. What I can do is look at the specs, because I know some of you really enjoyed, actually, when I went through the brochure. I didn't go through the specs completely thoroughly, but we can actually do so as I'm actually looking at this table. First of all, I'm going to tell you the specifications and then how many were first registered. Now, this information is based off how many left, but I have confirmed this with the information the DFT have given on these cars, which is what how many left goes by. But with Rover 45s, it's actually easier to break them down, and how many left is actually quite accurate when it comes to Rover 45s. So there really isn't any issue, whereas Mark 1 Focuses are a little bit... Rover 45, now the bottom spec with the Mark 2s was the Classic, okay? Now the Classic, you got all the basic stuff. You didn't really get too much. It was the poverty spec, and I've not seen one. I've not actually physically seen one in the flesh. You got black, I think, not body colour mirrors, plastic mirrors. You didn't get things like your reverse sensors, or there was no air conditioning. There was manual windows. I believe it may have been manual heating and climate. Well, it wouldn't have been climate control. It might have been manual heating. But you got a radio cassette. It would all had the basic stuff, but mostly it would have been there. But the only engine you could actually get with the Classic was the 1.4K series. The amount of them that were first registered, according to how many left and the DFT, 158. That's crazy. That's a crazy low number. And now, on the road, there are 11. 11. Remember, all this data is from Q3, so this data is already about 4 or 5 months old. So these numbers that I'm giving you may be fractionally lower, will be probably. Sawned, there are 11 of them on sawn. So 11 on the road, 11 sawned. So that's the Classic. The next one is the Classic SE. Now, that basically adds an electric sunroof, the Traffic Master alert system, so that little clock, you've got the Traffic Master system, and the rear ultrasonic parking sensors. So if you went for the SE, which I suspect would have been a little bit more popular, and according to this, there were 367 first registered. So double the amount of the ones that were Classic specs. So I think this would have been a bit more attractive. Certainly the parking sensors. I think the parking sensors are such a good option. I think the rear visibility, even though you look at a Rover 45 and think, oh, that's a nice big window. It isn't when it comes to the actual driving position. I think you're sitting quite low down compared with the height of the back window. And I've found that it's a bit difficult to reverse without really having a look over your shoulder. I mean, I'm pretty good at driving. I'm got good at driving awareness, but a bit difficult. On the road, 38. Sawned, 24. Again, penny numbers, not even 50 on each side. And you could only get that with the 1.4K series. The next model up is the Club. Now, the Club basically would have given you, ooh, let's have a look, more interior choices. I'm reading off the sheet here. Don't shoot the messenger. You got CFC-free air conditioning, including a pollen filter. Oh, so you didn't get a pollen filter on the Classic SE and Classic models. That's interesting. The electric front windows with drivers one shot open, always really good. The electric rear windows, electric operated and heated door mirrors, and body coloured door mirrors are electrically. So those mirrors are heated. I wonder if mine are working, because obviously if it's on the Club, it'll be on the Connoisseur. I've got to check that out. Well, I won't know until I get a really cold day. Body coloured door mirrors, a CD tuner, steering wheel mounted controls with the audio, which mine are no longer functions because I've disconnected it. Front tweeters, which is always nice. And on the four-door models, you've got front fog lights, power wash, and the heated front seats. Those are the only three things that you got on the saloon that you didn't get on the hatchback. But on the Club models, 810 of them were first registered. 810. On the road today, 84 of them. 84. So which is roughly 10% of what was left. And 71 are sawned. So if you add the sawned and on-road data on together, that's about 160. So 160 are left of 810. Most of them probably going to go to the scrapyard if they're unsawn. I should really do this as a live stream, because we could have a proper conversation. Maybe I'll have that as an idea going forward. The next model down, I've had it as a model in its own right. The Club Turbo Diesel, 101 brake horsepower. So this is the lower mapped G-tuned version of the L series. I believe the reason they did this, because you had the 113 version, is for insurance purposes, to put you in a lower insurance bracket. That's what it was all about then. He literally just mapped the engine to 113 for the models in a higher bracket. But of all the ones that are actually remaining, well, 108 were first registered, so much lower than the petrols, a much more niche category. 108. 10 of them are on the road. 10. Just 10 today. Sawned, 16. So there are 26 left of 108, which is actually pretty good survival rate compared with the rest of them, because that's pretty much just under a quarter. Interesting. The Club SE. Now, the Club SE, overall, I will say, sorry, I meant to say this before. The Club models, you could get the 1.4, the 1.6, and obviously I've just said the 2-litre diesel. But as I say, the Club model on its own would have the 1.4, 1.6. Now, the Club SE, you could have the 1.8 litre as well as everything else, plus the automatic step speed CVT option. And you also, as well as the 2-litre 101 diesel, you had the 113 diesel, the higher banded, much more powerful diesel. I mean, you're talking about probably 20 newton meters of torque and a little bit more power. But apparently there is no difference in the CO2 between the two cars, which is quite interesting. The Club SE represents the biggest number first registered for Mark II. There were just under 2,000 first registered. 2,000. On the road today, there are 261 of them, and there are 136 on sawn. That's, if you do the maths, that's about 400 in total. Again, we're talking about 20% left in existence of what was first registered. But as I say, most of them on sawn will probably go to the scrapyard. There are people that have got them off the road because they're either keeping them off the road deliberately or they're restoring them. That's why I have included the sawn data in this video, because I think it's quite relevant. Now, the next model I've included completely separately from all the rest, because it's the CVT model, and I think you'd be interested to see how many CVTs are left, because I find them quite interesting. Some people don't, some people do. The Club SE CVT models. There were 309 first registered. On the road, now 48. Sawned, 24. That is 72 in existence out of 309 first registered. That's a pretty poor survival rate, and I think we all know why they haven't survived very well. Do we? And then we have the two brackets further down. I've separated these again. The Club SE Turbo Diesel 101 model. 372 first registered. 42 left today on the roads. 48 on sawn. So that's exactly 100. 100 are in existence out of 372. That is the average. Then you have the Club SE Turbo Diesel 113. There were 320 of them, so slightly less than the lower spec model, the lower horsepower model. 37 of them are left and 50 are sawned, so there's more sawned than on the road. That's quite interesting because so far only one of them has had more cars off the road than on, but I'm sure that may change in the future. The next model is the Connoisseur. Now the Connoisseur, I'm just going to read it out to you. You got every engine choice you wanted, apart from you couldn't get the 101 diesel. You could only have the 113 full blast L series engine on the Connoisseur. You got leather seat facings, chrome door mirrors. It's good to see leather seat facings. That's actually quite interesting because a lot of manufacturers, particularly on a lot of Ford brochures I've got, they will not admit to having just leather seat facings. They will say leather seats, which is actually fraud because they're not leather seats. Most of the seat is actually vinyl around the outsides. So I'm actually pleased that Rover put leather seat facings because the facings, the bit you sit on and the back your back sits on, are the only bits of leather on those seats. The headrests are pure vinyl, the back sides are pure vinyl, the sides are pure vinyl, and the bit around the bottom is pure vinyl. 16-inch 9-spoke alloy wheels with security wheel nuts. Lovely wheels. I'm going to get mine redone at some point because they're in a bit of a state. I really like them. I think they're the best ones. The turbine ones are not too bad. I don't mind them either, but I prefer the Connoisseur ones. And you got the CD auto changeover, which mine has been thrown in the bin many years ago. And the coaxial's just been cut. Why would you do that? I don't know. And again, if you wanted the saloon version, heated seats, front fog lights, headlamp washers. That's it. Now I'm just going to start with the Connoisseur models alone. Now with the Connoisseur, okay, you could get a choice of either 1.6 and 1.8. Okay, you could get a choice of either engine. There are 187 first registered. So we're talking about the petrol 1.6 and 1.8 Connoisseurs. 187 first registered. Only 37 are left and 13 are sawned. Connoisseur CVT, you could only get that with the 1.8. This is my car, this is. 264 first registered, so clearly it was way more popular than the manual 1.6 and 1.8 Connoisseur. 42 are on the road, and like mine, 34 sawned. There are 76 left of 264 altogether. So again, poor survival rate again. The Connoisseur turbo diesel 113 L series, 245 first registered. So actually almost as popular as the CVT, which is quite interesting. So in fact, the turbo diesel was more popular than a 1.416 K series on the Connoisseur spec. Interesting. 32 are left on the roads, 33 are sawned. That's a pretty poor survival rate compared with the rest. I'm not sure why that is. And then we had the run-out models. Now, they weren't supposed to be run-out models. They were the 2005 specification models. We still had some of the models like the Clubs and the Connoisseurs. They were still being built into 2005. But there was some new specs on the horizon. And the last brochure you can get for the 45 showed the GLI and the GSI specs. Now the GLI was a slightly lower spec, the GSI was a bit more. I think it was more of a I think it was a case of throwing all the toys they could at these cars. They certainly did bulk these cars up a little bit. Project Drive took a lot of things away, but they actually started adding things way towards the end. Obviously, they didn't know. I don't think they knew that the company was going to end, well, in April. They'd have probably gone a bit further down the line, but not too far. And I think this might have been the start of the end for both these cars, the 25 and the 45, the 25 sharing the same specs, so the GLI, GSI. So for the 45, the GLI, I can't tell you what the specs are because I haven't got the spec sheet in front of me. All I know is the GSI was the top one, the GLI was slightly lower. GLI, first registered 265, so they built 265 of them things in about 4 or 5 months, maybe 6. That's quite good. 40 are now left on the road, 21 are sawned. So 60, 61, that's a poor survival rate. The GSI was much more popular, 370 first registered. On the road today there are 61, so again kind of in line with the GLI, and there are 41 sawned. Now I will just point out here, the GLI could only come with the 1.4. The GSI could come with the 1.4 and 1.6 K series, so it was kind of split between the two. In May, I will be able to give a breakdown. So we've got the Club SE that you could have a 1.4, 1.6 or 1.8 manual. Okay, you've got 3 options there. I'll be able to give you a breakdown of how many are left for each engine. So I'll be able to tell you, out of 261 Club SEs left, how many of those 261 are 1.4s and 1.6s and 1.8s, and I'll be able to say that actually. That'll be quite interesting. But the GSI turbo diesel, which you can only get with the 101 horsepower version, the detuned version, 122 are first registered, 22 are left on the road, 14 sawned. Not many left. But again, in line with kind of the percentages. Now, I'm going to give you the grand totals. I've just gone through this list, and as I say, I think half of you have nodded off. But if you want the details of how many are left, this is kind of it. I can share this. I'm probably going to put this on a separate spreadsheet. If anybody wants to see this, just give me an email and I can send you a copy of what I'm looking at. I will be able to do this in more detail. But the totals, there were just under 6,000 Mark II Rover 45s made. First registered in this country, sorry. There was more made abroad, but just under 6,000. On the road today, 765. That's 13% of what was first registered. 13%. That's it. And they are going down. Slowly, I suspect they're slowing down because people are wanting to buy them because they're classics and nostalgia is kicking off. They've got to that age. And sawned, there's 536, which represents 9.2%. So in total, around 22% of the Mark IIs are left. And considering that they're the youngest examples, they're not very well kept and they're not looked after, and their survival rate is really low actually compared with the Mark I's, which is crazy. But I think it probably shows you a few factors. They weren't particularly popular and the build quality has just caught up with most of them. I certainly think that with Beatrix, she's solid underneath, but she has so many issues. I can't see many people like myself coming along and doing what I've done. I really can't see that because the cost of paying somebody, even a mechanic, to do some of the jobs would have just outweighed the total value of the car. The only way of me not busting the bank was for me to do everything myself, pretty much. So that really is that. I've given you a little bit of perspective on if you are a Rover 45 Mark II owner, that's how rare your car is. So I've covered everybody's car there. Your car will be one of them. It will be in one of those categories. If you want any specific information, just give me a message, put a comment below, like and subscribe if you haven't done so. If you have subscribed, which I gather you may have, if you've got to the end of this video, clearly you are a Rover 45 enthusiast through and through. Spread the word to other people, because I have a small but growing number, and I have been doing a little bit of promotion on Facebook just to get more and more people watching these videos, because the Beatrix videos really do deserve to be seen by a few more people, and hopefully it gives people some confidence that they can actually tackle some of their issues. I've had more than one person come up to me and saying, you know what, I've had my car 10 years. You've done more in it in a few months than I've done in 10 years ownership. Well, do you know, you've got to put yourself in the deep end. And I hope that I've given people confidence to just get their hands dirty. It's really that simple. If I can do it in a couple of months and you haven't touched it, well, you haven't done much in 10 years, it's that easy. You can get your hands dirty and you'll be doing more work than you've done in 10 years like that. Simple as that. So take care all. You stay safe. I will see you in another Beatrix episode 45, MG Rover, you name it. See you soon.